Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Welcome to America at Night with Rich Valdez. As you can probably tell, I'm not Rich. He is out tonight, but he's well. He was honored to host and be chosen by New York City Councilman Vicky Palladino to be the MC for the State of the District Address, and will be back tomorrow. So have no fears, the Fearless Leader will be back tomorrow. But I am JD Lake. I'm broadcasting from Fargo, North Dakota, the beautiful and wonderful WDAY AM 970 studios. It is actually beautiful up here right now. It's still sunny where I'm at, and obviously we were able to hold up here a little bit longer before sunsets. I think sunset's now about 9 o'clock for us. It's pretty late. So thanks for sticking around tonight. I'm probably a new voice to you. I being heard obviously all over the country. And I'll give a little shout out here again to AM 970 WDAY. This is I've actually been at these studios before. My mentor and friend Scott Hannon, I have to thank him. It's kind of a little surreal sitting here tonight in the seat that I'm in, which was the first seat that I ever sat in and did a radio program solo. So thank you, Mr. Scott Hannon, and he's just an awesome guy and one of the owners of the station and just a good friend and mentor. My other thank you would be to Mr. Steve Hallstrom, El Presidente, as we like to call him here, the president and one of the other owners of the studios up here. So appreciate his guidance in my radio endeavors. He's been very kind to me. And then the last one I'll bring up, and this is actually how I met Rich. You know, I'm a listener just like you a number of years ago and listened to Rich. I've even called in. In fact, Rich cracked up when he heard that. I said, yeah, of course I call in. It's a call-in show. But I hosted a show up here, the Jay Thomas Show. So thank you, Jay Thomas. I wouldn't be here without him either. And Jay Thomas actually, I would go get my own guests, right? So I thought, well, hey, this is, fun. Rich is on the station. I'm going to go out and I'm going to see if Rich would be interested in joining me. And he was kind enough to come on 2 programs with me. So I certainly appreciate his guidance and his wisdom. And, we had some good laughs on the show, and he told me about things he used to do back in the day and how he actually got the Rich Valdez Show, which some of you know, obviously, from taking over for the great Jim Bohannon. So a little bit about me, other than, thanking some of the folks that helped me to get here. I'm born and raised in Minnesota. I had mentioned Fargo before, so some of you that have been up this way know Fargo borders right on Minnesota. So for me, my home right now is about 45 minutes from here in what's called Lakes Country. So Lakes Country is, people know this as Minnesota land of 10,000 lakes, right? Well, some of those lakes are very small. There would be ponds, and they're smaller bodies of water. But there's a very large number of larger lakes, and I live on one of those. I have for a few years now. It used to be a family lake place. That's kind of what's common here in Minnesota. So people might have a lake cottage, or they might call it a cabin. Something where they have a second home. They come up from Minneapolis. They come from Fargo. They come from a lot of different areas and to those during the summertime. So things are definitely starting to get busy now. I've lived here. I only have one home, humbly, and I've lived here for a few years now, like I said, but coming up here all my life. But born and raised in Minneapolis, and I lived out in California a couple times, in Los Angeles, and worked in Hollywood one of those times. I don't know if we'll get into any of those stories tonight, but maybe it might be in it for another time. We have a lot of good guests tonight, and I'll get to that in just a second. But raised in a Christian conservative household, so I was happy to have that. Excuse me, I was happy to have that opportunity when I was younger. That I was raised, going to church, right, going to confirmation, those types of things. If you're not a believer, that's okay. It's just something that has been a big part of my life. And then the conservative part, I was thinking about this the other day as I was, wanting to go through my intro and kind of introduce myself nationally here, is, probably my early 20s, I wasn't super, super conservative. I mean, it wasn't liberal necessarily, but I was just nothing, right? I mean, and I was thinking, like, back in the day, it was so nice to be able to go to a baseball game, right? And you go to that baseball game and, you're sitting next to everybody. It doesn't matter what color, creed, religion, gender they were. It was just you were there enjoying a great game together, and you might cheer for the same team or not, but it was friendly, and if there might be friendly banter if it wasn't cheering for the same team. But you didn't have any of this stop the hate on the field, or running rainbow flags or emblems around, or the black national anthem, and all of these other things that are just so divisive now. And it just makes, I know one of my friends, and just makes him cringe. He says he sees the stop the hate in the end zones at the football games, and stop the hate. That's like saying I'm anti-cancer. Everybody's anti-cancer, of course, and everybody, for the most part, I would say, wants to stop the hate. But nonetheless, that's the era I grew up in where that wasn't such a case. And going into my 30s and probably 40s is when I started to get a little more interested in politics. And I'm like you, the listeners of the show, right? I like to consume a lot of this media, and sometimes it's a little exhausting, right? Because depending on what's going on in the world, I try not to let it bring me down too much at the end of the day. But the media, of course, gets people spun up about a lot of different things these days, and whether it's weather events that's been happening as of recent, I know in our neck of the woods, or things like political beliefs. And I just try to, one of the themes I was thinking of when I was kind of arranging, my guest list tonight, and also some of my content, was kind of on unity, right? And I'll talk about that more at the end of the, or later in the program, I should say. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Bill Maher stuff that came out. I'm not sure if you guys caught that, but he had visited the White House a couple weeks ago, had a dinner with President Trump, and these two couldn't be more opposed, right? We'll talk about that. I got some clips from that I think you're going to be interested in, but there's been some nice reach across the aisles recently, and that's one of them. I'd say another one is Bill Maher again on his Club Random podcast talking to Charlie Kirk, right? Another reach across the aisle, and I watched that whole thing, and I'll maybe talk about that a bit as well. But there's definitely something about turning the volume down now, and I'd like to definitely do that going forward. But we have a good show for you tonight. I have Jason Lewis coming up here. He'll be in the second segment. Jason Lewis is actually was quite the broadcaster himself. He's still very active in politics and things like that, but he was on about 150 some stations at one time. He was obviously nationally syndicated, and he's a voice that you might remember once you hear it, and some of you might recognize his name because, again, he played in a lot of markets that Rich's show was on. He since then has also been he's been in Congress. He was in Congress in our state for a couple years, and that was during the first Trump presidency. And then most recently, he has a Substack, and I'll just give it a real quick here. We'll give it a few more times, jasonlewis.substack.com. But we're going to have him on, and he's got a real good pulse of what's going on in politics because he's been in the national seat for a long time. So we're going to talk with him. We're also going to talk with the legendary Keith Hittner Sr. Keith Hittner Sr. Runs a very large real estate brokerage in Minneapolis. He also has ran a title firm before, has done billions of dollars in sales, and again, been in the business a while. And I wanted to bring him on to talk about, we hear a lot about the economy right now with whether it's the stock market going up and down, which I'll talk about maybe in a little bit, but also, interest rates. What are those going to do? Are they going to go higher? The tariffs, all of the stuff that's going on. And when is it a good time to buy a home? There might be, and that's why I thought this was kind of a good topic to bring up for the audience tonight, is there, you might be in the market to, I want to maybe buy a home, or maybe you have a kid graduating from college or that's into a new job for a couple years and they're saying they want to buy a home. Or maybe you're looking to downgrade or upgrade and get another home or sell yours. So I thought it'd be good to bring Keith on, and he's good about, again, the national pulse when it comes to everything home buying. And then the last guest I have, and this will be probably the last a little bit of second hour, maybe into third hour, is a good friend of mine named Bob Shimp. Bob Shimp owns a large multi-location company here in the area that I'm in, but he's part of an organization called RUK, which stands for Rise Up Kings. So RUK or RUK. And it's a men's leadership / family slash fitness slash finance. That's really their pillars. And they're about really putting masculinity back into the culture, right? We've been for a number of years, obviously demasculized and, really trying to get back to where men are leaders again. And we're going to talk with him all about that. He's got a lot of great stories of how it's changed his life. We're going to talk to him about the before and after, right? And I know he's been married for a lot of years, and what it's done for his marriage and his relationship, what it's done for his family, and what it's just done for his faith overall. So we'll talk with him more about that. We're also going to take your calls all night as much best we can. And that number, as you guys know, probably is 833-482-5337 or 8334-VALDEZ. So we're going to be interested in hearing from you on really anything that's on your mind and anything with the guests that we have on too as well. But I was talking a little bit, just to kind of get into a little bit of a quick topic about the stock market a second ago, and we'll probably bring this up again when we talk with Keith. But you hear it constantly about it going up and down, and I saw a headline the other day that was striking. That was yesterday when there was mention that the economy had shrinked a little bit, and of course the media spun that up and said, you know what, the sky is falling. We told you this would be Trump's economy, etc. Some of this is left over, I'll admit, from the previous. And some of this very well might be because of some of the tariff stuff. We knew there was going to be some short-term pain, and we're feeling that now. But I don't think it's as bad as again, everybody's letting on. And I mentioned that, again, back to the stock market yesterday. The headline was in the morning when I woke up, it's down 800 points. And the sky is falling because the economy shrunk by, again, whatever that percentage was. I don't have it handy right now. And here's the moral of the story. What did it close at yesterday? It closed 141 points higher. And that's the moral of the story. Everybody panicked in the morning, and that's what you can't do in this market. So, again, I would say with everything, whether it's the tariffs, whether it's the stock markets, just, again, be calm and level-headed about this stuff. But, and we'll get through this together. But, again, we have a good show for you. I'm going to... we're going to go to break here shortly, and we'll come back with we'll come back with Jason Lewis, and he is again known as America's Mr. Right. We'll talk to him about that as well. That was kind of his name when he was on the radio, and he'll give us the pulse of what's going on. And we're going to ask him a lot of good questions, and we'll take some calls after we're through with him. But I would say, please stick around. Don't change that dial, and don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
Welcome back to America at Night with Rich Valdez. As you can see, I'm not Rich tonight. He's out for the evening, but we'll be back tomorrow. I am JD Lake, broadcasting from Fargo, North Dakota tonight. Thank you, Rich, appreciate you letting me be here. I was giving you all my thank yous a little while ago, and I forgot Mr. Rich. So, yeah, he knows I'm very appreciative of this. And our first guest tonight probably doesn't need too much of an introduction. I think there's a number of people probably listening that know this guy. He was at one point on about 150 plus stations, nationally syndicated. He's been in broadcasting for 30 years plus. He has a Substack right now, jasonlewis.substack.com, and he's known affectionately as America's Mr. Right. And that's coined from his program. How are you doing there, buddy?
Hey, JD, you're sounding good, my friend. Good to hear your voice from beautiful Fargo, where global warming is actually real about 30 days out of the year.
That's right. No, it's beautiful up here. I'm watching the sunset out the other end of the station right now, and I mean, we have, of course, later sunsets here. The further north you get, so it's gorgeous. But how are you doing?
The
so I haven't
thing about living way up north there like that is the sun sets late once you go on daylight savings time, but because the Earth's axis is tilted and all that good stuff, you really get late sunsets like 9 and 10. But it's 9 o'clock, the sun's going down, looks great, and it's 42 degrees out.
This is true. And now tonight it's a little bit better.
And the sun sets and it's 88 degrees. Just saying.
Come on. There's still a lot of the country that's a little chillier, Jason.
So, yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure.
And how long have you been down there now in Florida?
Oh, I've been down here a few years now. I escaped to the People's Republic of Minnesota after I served a term in Congress representing the good folks of the 2nd District. I ran for the U.S. Senate in Minnesota against arguably the most liberal senator in the country, Tina Smith. She's a Democrat representing Planned Parenthood. It used to be Democrat-MN. Now it's just Democrat-PP because they funded her campaigns and she's radically pro-abortion to the point of she wouldn't even condemn the partial birth or anti-partial birth bill. But that was 2020 in the midst of a pandemic when our campaign was locked down, but the rioters were open and they got a free hand, sort of like Tesla destroyers, if you will. So Minnesota is at this crossroads that I think is well, I wouldn't even say a crossroads. I think Minnesota is a cold California anymore, and I think that's really sad. But they had their chance, and we came very close in that Senate race, but didn't quite get over the hump in 2020. I came in with President Trump, went out with President Trump. Now he's back, and I'm enjoying retirement watching him. But I did write a book about my experience in Congress, as well as that infamous Senate run in the midst of COVID and riots in Minnesota called Party Animal, The Truth About President Trump, Power Politics, and the Partisan Press. And I'd encourage everybody to read it if you want to know where we've been and where we're going.
And that, by the way, too, you can get in touch with him besides the Substack that I mentioned at jasonlewislive.com. So you can find out about that book and the other one, the most recent one, is that the most recent? I'm just looking here. Yeah, The Party Animal. Yeah,
it is. Party Animal is sort of a political biography, but it was written in the context of the false Russian collusion nonsense, the media constant lying, the assaults on President Trump, and then COVID. And it covers about these 5 crucial years in America when I was in Washington and then running in this crazy Senate race, as I say. Rioters got a free reign, but our campaign was locked down by Tim Walsh. We had to sue him at one point. So it's all in the book called Party Animal by Jason Lewis. Check it out. And check out our newsletter at jasonlewis.substack.com. And some folks, by the way, I haven't, spoken with for many years since I've been off the radio, but I used to fill in for Rush quite a bit. And I know a lot of folks remember that, and I do fondly as well.
Yeah. And on that note, too, you brought up Tim Walz, or we like to call him up in this country Emperor Tim or Emperor Walz. Some people affectionately call him Tampon Tim. and folks that are nationally may not understand the reference of Tampon Tim, but that is in regards with his, I'm not making this up, putting tampon machines in boys' bathrooms in, I believe, elementary schools. At the minimum,
defying the president's executive order on DEI and transgenderism under Title IX, and they're just saying no, which is a grotesque violation of the law. And I think the next thing you're going to see is, along with sanctuary cities, is folks are going to say, well, okay, if you don't want to abide by the law, then we're not going to abide by funding, and these states are going to see their funding cut. And it's really, they can't survive, California and Minnesota and Illinois, without federal funds.
Well, hold that thought. We'll be right back here with Jason Lewis, and we're going to ask him some questions about what he thinks about what other things are going on in the country, and we'll take your calls. So stick around, folks. We'll be right back.
Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Welcome back to America at Night with Rich Valdez. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. You can tell I'm not Rich Valdez. I am J.D. Lake. Rich is well, though. Don't worry. He was honored to be chosen by the New York City Councilwoman Vicky Palladino to be for the state, to be the MC for the State of the District address, and we'll be back tomorrow. So again, the Fearless Leader will be back in tomorrow evening. This evening, we're talking with Jason Lewis. Jason Lewis has been on radio for quite some time, and just before break, we were talking about Tim Walz here in Minnesota, where I live. But I had some other questions. I don't know if I want to waste too much time on Tim, Jason. So, as anybody
well, I
does,
think Mr. Walz is a microcosm of everything that's wrong with liberalism today. It's gone. They've jumped the shark. And Minnesota has declined in quality of life and living and population faster than perhaps any other state. It has been a race to the bottom. And so the country saw that and rejected it wholeheartedly in November. The problem is Minnesotans haven't. And the same is true for Illinois, for California, for Massachusetts, you name it, Oregon, Colorado's really trending left. And so you're seeing this great exercise in the 10th Amendment, JD, between these red states getting redder and gaining population and these other states losing. And what that portends in 2030 after the census is a much larger stake in the Congress for red states, which means probably more Republicans. So there's a silver lining, but it's not too good for people that live in Minnesota right now.
Yeah, what I was getting at with him is, and be thankful, the rest of America, that we did not get him as a vice president. That's all we can say on that topic. Hey, I got a question for you, though.
One other point on that, JD. One other point on that. I left Congress in 2019, and I'm not tooting my own horn, but that was the year the Democrats took over the House in the biggest sweep since Watergate. And I would ask any of your listeners across the country tonight if they truly think that things were better since the Democrats took Congress and Biden was elected president. Or were they better before that and getting better now? I don't think there's any question to the answer there. That's why the Democrats are polling at 25%.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say I heard it's even lower than that. I don't know if you saw that press conference the other day with Chuck Schumer. He actually got called out, right? Somebody asked a question because he was talking about the low poll numbers with Trump, right? Which was very ironic. The first question from the media was, well, do you know Congress, your Congress is actually polling at 17% or whatever the number was. And then Chuck Schumer, first words out of his mouth were, well, polls don't really matter. They come and go.
Yeah, right.
I thought that was beautiful.
Well, they matter to Chuck.
One thing, we just passed that 100-day mark, right? And I wanted to see kind of what your thoughts are so far. And, you saw the first Trump admin. This one's much different. But, how do you feel about this one? And what are some changes you would like to see?
Well, talk about learning from experience. So I came to Washington with President Trump in 2016, elected in 2016, inaugurated January of 2017. And I have to say, you had a number of freshmen in Congress, including myself, but you had an administration that was a little bit green. And you had the administration mixed with people that were trying to sabotage it. And the president didn't quite know his way around. Nevertheless, we got lots of good things done, like the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, like congressional review authorizations, undoing millions of regulations or millions of dollars worth of regulations and things like that. VA reform, for example, inflation, growth without inflation, all of that occurred in the first term. But this term, I am so pleasantly surprised at how the president had this teed up, ready to go on day one. It has been the most robust reversal of a Biden disaster I could possibly imagine. And so I'm very, very sanguine about not only the first 100 days, but the next 100 to come. And I have to say, I heard you talking earlier about the GDP figures, and do not dwell on that, because lots of people in the media, of course, are throwing these tariff tantrums. The sky is falling. The Wall Street Journal, which is totally turned on Trump and Republicans in general, had this big headline in the middle of April. The market is crashing because of the Trump tariffs. The market has recovered all of what it lost in the first part of April. It ended April about the same as it began. So they're so eager to bring this guy down still that they have essentially bastardized journalism, if there's anything left. But understand this first quarter, or this last quarter GDP figure. A, it's under the Biden policies. B, it was a rush of imports to beat Liberation Day on April 2nd, which is after the GDP quarter. or the quarter where this GDP was measured. And government spending went down. And because and this gets in a little bit into the weeds here, but our national income accounting is so skewed towards consumerism and government spending that when you get more investment for future growth and less immediate spending in the current quarter, you see a down quarter. Domestic investment went up at a 22% annualized rate in this quarter. That is going to be rocket fuel for future growth. You mark my words. And because government purchases count as GDP, DOGE was successful in actually reducing now, and this is another media lie, DOGE is not reducing spending. This GDP figure that came out said actually government spending went down in the quarter. Because of that, the GDP artificially went down. So actually, I think there was a huge silver lining in this GDP number.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. Yesterday, there was so much going on, right? There was that cabinet meeting that was broadcast, but after that, they were talking to Trump was speaking to all the various business owners, right? And huge corporations that are donating, and he had them all stand up, like, "What are you investing in?" And it was 140 billion here, and I thought that was just, it's unbelievable the investments that are happening.
Well, look, Alexander Hamilton was the first tariff guy, right? He was the real tariff man. But the bottom line is taxes are a necessary evil. So the question is, which tax are you going to levy that's going to do the least amount of destruction? And Trump believes, as do I, that a tax on foreign consumption, if you want to call a tariff a tax on foreign consumption is preferable to a tax on domestic production. So what you do is you take the revenues from the tariffs and you use that to cut domestic income taxes, which if the Congress would get off his butt and get this bill done, it would happen overnight.
On taxes, something near and dear, I'm sure, to this audience, and as with everybody, including yourself, is income tax. Do you really think, and because you listen to enough clips of Navarro, of Scott Bessent and all these other folks, and they really think they can get rid of the income tax. Do you think that's possible?
Well, not in the near term. I will say I was in Congress when we passed the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, and that's what this Congress needs to renew. And once they do, hopefully by Memorial Day, you're going to see another spurt of growth and another surge in the stock market. But what you can do with that tariff revenue is defray a good chunk of the income tax. And if we could just get the special interests out, the SALT folks and the military-industrial complex folks that just want more money for the Pentagon, no matter how much. If we get those people to come to their senses a little bit, you could lower income tax rates very, very substantially, which is going to be, again, more fuel for the economy. Over time, could you eliminate the income tax? Maybe over time. But what you can do is eliminate a good chunk of it. So, again, if you want to call a tariff a tax, you raise that tax on Chinese toys and you lower it for every man and woman in America who's working and earning a check. Now, what's not to like about that, JD?
I know, and that's the thing. You talk about rocket fuel for the economy, and you start putting money back in people's pockets. That's it, right? I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you a little bit about Iran. So it was interesting. I thought that was kind of put to bed, that a lot of these neocons weren't convincing Trump, and then the other week it all got quieted down, and we were going to negotiate with them. And then I see the first headline this week was Fetterman comes out and says we should bomb the nuclear facilities. And I'm thinking, are these people crazy? And obviously with Mike Waltz exiting today, kind of what do you make of all the Iran talk right now? And we got a couple minutes left.
Well, I tell you, if you thought Iraq was fun, that's a walk in the park compared to Iran. The war hawks, and this is the problem with the John Bolton, Liz Cheney crowd in the Republican Party, these neoconservatives are hell-bent on another conflict. And like Dwight Eisenhower said to the folks who wanted him to nuke Korea, the Korean Peninsula, are you boys crazy? This would get us into World War III. Iran is a much larger territory with many millions more people than Iraq, and we couldn't even handle Iraq. It's a total disaster. Containment is the best policy, and I'm hopeful the president will stick to his instincts, which is exactly that. And by the way, that's the real truth about Michael Waltz. They sent him to the UN, but that's where you put people who you don't want in policy-making roles. The fact of the matter is he was in trouble before he looped in the Atlantic reporter, and I couldn't imagine a worse reporter to loop in, or his staff did. He was in trouble because he was one of the more hawkish ones on Iran and other areas. And the president and J.D. Vance and this new Republican realist foreign policy view says we're not going to spend more blood and treasure on sending your sons and daughters over to fight in conflicts that don't have no direct national security interest in the United States. We're adopting a Eisenhower-ish foreign policy as well. We should. It's the traditional Republican policy.
Well, that's spot on. And I thanks so much for your analysis, Jason. I know that you have to go, and really appreciate you joining the program tonight, and obviously the same kind of wisdom that we heard years ago on your radio program. Again, it's jasonlewislive.com. You can find out everything, including a Substack, if you want to order the book Party Animal. And anyway, there's probably ways to get a hold of you on that that site as well. So, again, appreciate you joining tonight. Thanks so much, Jason.
Well, Dustin, you're doing a great job. Keep up the good work, and we'll talk to you next time.
Yeah, and we'll take your calls, folks, after the break here, 833-482-5337 or 833-4-VALDEZ with an S. Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Welcome back to America at Night with Rich Valdez. I'm filling in for him. I'm J.D. Lake, broadcasting from Fargo, North Dakota tonight. Thank you for sticking around. So we were talking with Jason there before the break about, just different things going on with the economy. Obviously, we ended with Iran there, but wanted to play a couple clips for you that I thought were kind of apropos. And again, this goes directly to the point of don't panic with this stuff. You're hearing in the liberal media all day long, you have to panic because, again, the sky is falling. Trump's making a decision. It's affecting the stock market negatively, and that's really what the panic is, right? The people are pulling out for whatever reason. Don't panic. And I think one of these, I want to play this clip first, and we'll play clip 5 from Frank Luntz. And he's talking to essentially a group of voters here on a Zoom call, and I may come in and narrate a little bit as it's playing, but essentially about 20 people on the call, and he's asking them, the first words out of his mouth are going to be, so this is crashing your 401ks, isn't it? And we'll go ahead and play that right now.
I need to ask you an issue that no one's brought up and that has crashed your 401ks, most of you, which are tariffs. Stock market is way down.
It needed a correction.
Oh, so you support it?
Yes. You bet.
Yep.
How many?
And I have to tell you,
how many?
my 401k wasn't impacted at all.
How many? First off, how many of you did not lose any money over the crash of the stock market? One individual, 2 people. So, Serena.
The Biden administration, I lost more money than the Trump administration by far.
In 2020,
Like
in 2022, they crashed it by 25%. Yeah. For the whole year.
No one's upset over this?
No.
No.
Nobody.
There's not a
there's an endgame
single
here, though.
40-year period in the history of the stock market where the stock market hasn't appreciated at an average rate of about 7%. It's so, yeah, there's ups and downs and corrections, and sometimes people are foolish and they jump out, buy high, sell low. But if people just get in and stay the course, they'll be just fine.
And you heard what he said there, right? The key point out of that clip, there was a couple. The one key point out of there, though, that you grab at the end there is the stock market every year forever, right, has averaged 7% growth. So there hasn't been a year that hasn't at least hit 7%. And again, we're doing an interesting correction right now, not only with the economy, but even with the dollar, with all of it, with these tariffs. But I just thought that was a great point. And then the other point in there was, it's not affecting people as much as the media would tell you. Now, are there people that are probably listening tonight that are saying, well, JD, you're saying that, my 401k is not going down. I looked at it today and it's down X percent. It might be. What I would encourage people to do is, unless you need it, that's another thing. If you're going to take it out for retirement or you're right on retirement, what have you. But if you are just, in the market for years to come, don't watch it so close. There is going to be ebbs and flows to this. But I think in the end, and I mean in the end, in the short term, you're going to be very, very happy with where that lands. We'll play one more quick clip here before we go to break. And this is Jim Farley. I'll tell you something about his last name when we get back from break, just a little fun fact. But Jim Farley is the Ford CEO, right? And he's talking about what it's doing for his plants and his growth. And we'll come back here in just a second. So go ahead and play that cut for.
Well, first of all, Ford is really different. We make 80% in the U.S., more than any other manufacturer. In fact, we made 400,000 more vehicles than our next competitor, and that would fill up the entire island of Manhattan. That's how big of a gap we've made. So, look, we think this is really great for the country. We really support the president's initiative. We never left the America on car production, and so this moderation is reasonable. I think for mostly our competitors. They need more time, but at Ford, we're in good shape. And this is the right thing to do. We really appreciate the dialogue we've had with the president, but we have a lot more work to do with him and the team.
Yeah, what I like about everything that he said there, first of all, he's for it, right? You hear in the news all day long how it's just wrecking these companies, and these companies they're going to shut down and they're going to have to lay off people. Some might, as far as laying off. It depends on how much they're building here, right? How much they're doing in America. That's the point. The other point with these trade deals that you keep hearing about regarding the tariffs is Ford would love to get into other countries, right? There are countries right now like China and others that won't allow Fords in. We'll take their vehicles, but not the other way around. That's what this is trying to correct. It's a twofer, right? We want to bring more business into the country. That's the investment we talked about with Jason. But we're also wanting to obviously get our products into other countries. So keep that in mind with these. We're going to go to a break here. We'll be right back. And then at the top of the hour, we're going to be talking with the legendary Keith Hittner Sr. Don't change that dial, folks.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Welcome back to America at Night with Rich Valdez. I am JD Lake, covering for Mr. Rich tonight. He'll be back tomorrow, don't worry. Give us a call if you want, 833-482-5337, or that would be 833-4-VALDEZ with an S, as everybody knows, I think. We were talking before the break just about the economy, and we mentioned a little bit when we were talking with Jason Lewis about, I don't know if you caught the wind of Michael Waltz exited today, the administration. Michael Waltz actually and Alex Wong, now that I think about it. So this was, you remember a few weeks back, this got brought up. He was the national security advisor in that signal chat that brought in the Atlantic report inadvertently. And I know Trump likes him, and Trump's been very careful this time around with people. I don't know that there was a lot of questions about this guy. He still is an ambassador to something right now, but it's kind of more or less, a post in Antarctica. I mean, to be frank with you, but essentially, it was probably a better thing that he exited when he did now, because he was one of those neocons that definitely is all about bombing Iran, and we don't want to get involved with that, folks. So stick around. We're going to be back with the legendary Keith Hittner at the top of the hour. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Welcome back to America at Night with Rich Valdez. I am not him. I am JD Lake from broadcasting from Fargo, North Dakota, the AM 970 WDAY studios. Rich as well, though. Don't worry. He is honored to be chosen by the New York City Councilwoman, Vicky Palladino, to be the MC for the State at the District Address, and we'll be back tomorrow night. So don't you worry. He will be back. In the meantime, we're talking with Keith Hittner Sr. We're going to be shortly here. He is been in real estate for quite a number of years, and I thought I'd bring him on because I thought it was going to be kind of apropos with the housing market. I know a lot of friends personally that, either want to buy a home, they want to sell a home, they're talking about their kids that are, can't buy a home. And I just thought that it would be worth bringing him in. He's owned a real estate firm, or brokerage rather, for a number of years, has a lot of employees, so he understands the economy from that perspective as well. He's done billions of dollars of residential real estate sales and owned a title company as well. He is, again, just an excellent guy, and I thought he would give us a good pulse on what's going on nationally with the housing market. So the legendary Keith Hittner, are you there, buddy?
I'm here, JD. How the heck are you?
I'm good. So I was, in the lead up there, we were talking about the economy a bit ago with Jason Lewis and some of the stuff going on. But I thought, like I said, bring you on to talk a little bit about housing and what's going on, because you see this, and that's kind of the theme in general of this show, is that you see this constant beratement, if you will, of the media hyping things up. Now it might be the economy's going in the tank, so initially the stock market's down like it was yesterday, but then it ends up closing 141 up. Or you hear them talking about interest rates and like nobody's ever going to be able to buy a home again, but forgetting that, back in the Reagan days, the interest rates were in the teens. Now, I know the homes were cheaper too, but my point is the media likes to hype all this stuff. And I guess, what are you seeing out there on a national level with where things are at right now, if you would just kind of give us the high level of what's going on in the housing market? Is it that bad?
Well, what we're seeing at a national level, there's a Redfin report that just came out that's talking about the days on market, and the average days on market right now, 47 days to sell a typical home. That's the longest days to sell a home in 6 years. So it's been quite a while since it's taken that long, but that's still historically faster than a normal market. I've been in markets where 60 to 90 days was very typical. So 47 days is still a pretty quick market. Real estate is hyper local. So you'll have, and determined in most cases by price point. So the lower end price points move more quickly, and we see those things coming off the market. The average new home in our Midwest market comes on the market at $500,000, but the pending median sale price is more like $385,000, and we're seeing on those properties the days on market to be 24 days on market. So still a very quick market. What we are seeing, though, is, the market is changing. Our supply nationally, inventory is up 32%. That's 32% greater than a year ago, according to Housing Wire. And the demand measured by the pending units is up just 2%. So that's quite a delta between 32 and 2, which indicates a market that's really normalizing, because we were coming out of 2023, 2022 with, this blistering fast market where it was really impossible for people to get a home, 25, 30 offers on a house. Right now we're seeing a more normal market, a more balanced market, where sellers are making some concessions, buyers are feeling empowered to ask for some concessions. And, all the talk about the tariffs is really just hype. I talk to builders every day, and I talk to my builder friends. I said, how much are the tariffs really impacting your costs? And they said, well, none right now, because they're dealing off of stuff that's in current stock, current inventories. they don't expect any impact until the third or fourth quarter. So when they're talking about, people can't buy a house now because of tariffs, that's just not true. What we're really seeing is
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, finish your point.
Well, what we're really seeing is a lock-in effect of interest rates is more than anything. If somebody is, let's just say you've got a young family, and I'll just pick numbers out of the air, that they're buying a $300,000 house, at 3%, and now they want to move up and buy a different home at 7%. When you've got a price increase because they're going from 300 to 600, that's an increase right there just in the mortgage balance. But then that interest rate is going to add $1,000, $2,000 a month to their payment. So that makes people pause, and they're really now stopping to think and ask themselves, do I really need to move, or do I just kind of want to move? And we're seeing the kind of want to moves are being locked in. But people who, they're having another kid, they need a bigger house, they're downsizing, they're getting a divorce, somebody passed away, and they're empty nesters moving in. People are moving because they need to move, and those moves are happening, and it's good business.
By the way, if you ever want to get a hold of Keith Hittner, we'll give you out your website here. It is KeithAndSheilaHittner.com, and that's Sheila spelled SHEILA. Go KeithAndSheilaHittner.com.
The lovely and talented Sheila Hittner.
The lovely and talented. We know this. And you'll see a picture of both of them on that site. So, you brought up a lot of things in there to talk about. I guess the one that, I want to focus on is, like I said, there's stock right now when you talk about building for all those supplies. And, of course, none of that may change till third or fourth quarter, and it may change. It could go really either way depending on how these deals work out. And there again, we were talking about in the previous segments, there's a lot of investment going on right now that is going to make the markets move in a positive direction. That's going to make it better on homes, I believe, in the long run. I don't know if you caught that headline the other day. When we talk about media hype, they were saying there's going to be no toys at Christmas. I mean, it just never stops.
Here's the other thing. If you just stick to housing and construction, the prices are up. I mean, prices are still going up. They're not going up because of tariffs. They're going up because your basic supply and demand. We've got a lunatic governor on the West Coast that let the state burn down. We've got tornadoes and hurricanes and all of this stuff. All that is demand on sheetrock and wallboard and wiring and all those things. So then what I look at then is, okay, so what is our production capabilities? Because the president is talking about bringing production back home. So I say, okay, let's just talk about lumber. What are we doing for lumber? Well, it's interesting to note that, there's a lot of talk about all this lumber that we get out of Canada. Well, the largest lumber mill in the United States is Weyerhaeuser, with a capacity of about 4.6 billion board feet. And it's followed by West Fraser Timber Company and Sierra Pacific Industries. Weyerhaeuser also is the largest private timberland owner in the world. So we have capacity here. Now I look at other things like drywall. That's important for construction. You got to have your sheetrock. Well, the largest drywall manufacturer is the United States USG Corporation, and they're the largest distributor of wallboard in the country. So, we have the production capabilities here. The only place that I see where we may be vulnerable is cement, because 50% of the global cement production is in China. Well, that's true, but that means that 50% is somewhere else. And that 50% is in non-tariff countries. So we still have the ability and our own domestic production. So the 50% that China's making, they can ship that all over Europe or wherever they're going to use it. But there are plenty of resources right here at home. The truth is we just don't need anyone else. The 10th largest cable and wire manufacturer in the world is South Wire Company right here in the United States.
Now, something I paid attention to locally, but just on a national level, I know you said prices are still going up, but aren't inventories year over year increased a little bit? They're not, crazy numbers, but they have been increasing year over year, have they not?
Oh yeah, they're at 32%. We've got inventory is 32% higher than it was a year ago. That's good news, by the way, because it was at a desperately low level in 23. We are still not back to 2019 levels. So the pre-COVID levels, which is benchmark. So until we get back to that point, we're still in an inventory building time, and that's good. It's good for buyers because they've got selection now across all price ranges. The builders are doing a good job. There seems to be, and I'm working with a number of people right now. We're out and doing new construction in different areas of the Twin Cities in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and everybody's got inventory. I ask when I go in, do you have any supply line issues? Nope, no supply line issues. Do you get appliances? Yep, get all the appliances you want, anything you want. There's just no problem.
Yeah, and that's what I've heard as well. Again, not to say that some of that stuff may not happen, but if you're on the fence right now, I would encourage you to do a little research. The interest rates are still a little bit higher, right? And we hope they'll come down. Trump's, I know, working real hard with, to get those to come down. Now, foreclosures are kind of non-existent, are at this point. I mean, they're happening, but not at levels we saw years ago, right?
Yeah, it's like 3% or lower, depending on where
normalized.
And where you are. I mean, it's like nothing. The people who are doing foreclosure they're being foreclosed on for reasons other than it has nothing to do with the economy.
The one thing as normal in probably any time that I would encourage people to do too, and I listened, Keith has a radio show of his own, and he talks about, and it's nothing but real estate on a local level. But the thing I would encourage people to do also is if you have a lot of debt right now, it seems like there's a lot of credit card debt out there, as we know, and it's been going up, and other things. The interest rates might be higher on homes, but they're lower than a lot of that debt. So you see a lot of people doing HELOC or home equity loans, do you not?
That's brilliant because you're exactly right. Our loan officers that we work with are doing many refinances right now where they're doing cash out refi to pay down that credit card debt at 38%. And they can do that with a 7% or 6.5% home mortgage. And that's deductible where your credit card debt isn't. So when they're doing consolidations like that, and sometimes you need a little counseling on there because you can't just go run it back up again or you're going to be in the same boat. But you can save a household, $700, $800, $900, $1,000 a month just by doing a little restructuring of your debt picture and eliminating some of that high interest rate debt.
So hold that thought. We're going to go out to a break here in just a second. We'll be back with the legendary Keith Hittner Sr. And I wanted to ask you this question about, I know you're not a commercial real estate guy, but I just saw this headline about an office building in St. Louis that sold. It's a 44-story building that sold for $3.6 million in April of 2024. I wonder how much that building was back about 10 or 12 years ago. We're going to talk about that, and then we'll take any of your calls at 833-482-5337 or 833-4-VALDEZ. Go nowhere. We'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Welcome back to America at Night with Rich Valdez. I am JD Lake. I'm filling in for him this evening. Don't worry, he'll be back tomorrow, though. And we're going to be taking your calls here coming up. Right now, we're talking with the legendary Keith Hittner Sr. We're talking to him a little bit about the market and the housing market and what's going on there. And I had a question before the break, and I was asking you about, so I know commercial's not your specialty, but these headlines just kind of grabbed my attention, especially when you think about the dollars, Keith, is a St. Louis AT&T building, right? This big 44-story building. I've seen pictures of this thing. It's a beautiful building. It's not, it's not the bastion of architecture, but it's a pretty good looking building. Been sitting empty for a while. Sold for $3.6 million in April of last year, so about a year ago. In 2006, that same building sold for, guess what, folks, $205 million. So in that's less than 2% of what it was at its peak. Explain that, Keith.
Well, I tell you, I don't know the particulars of that circumstance, but I will tell you this. The burn rate of holding an empty 44-story building per month is astronomical, because that building still needs to be maintained, insured, HVAC, all of those expenses continue to go on, whether there's an occupancy in there or not. I just was checking with Castle, which is the big security company, and they have a barometer, the weekly occupancy report, where they're looking at occupancy of office buildings. Their report this week is 53.4% occupied. 53.4%. So most office buildings in general are running at about half full. And so the challenge for many of these companies that have these buildings all over the country is, what do we do with them? And how do we get rid of them when you're in a market that nobody's buying? And so, if your business is running at half price, look at our own Target. They closed down a number of their centers in the Twin Cities, where I used to own a catering company and a few restaurants, and we would cater to Target and some of the other Fortune 500 companies. They closed the building. It's down. I mean, nobody goes there anymore. What are you going to do with that building?
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. I used to go to our downtown area when I lived down in Minneapolis quite a bit, and yeah, I mean, ever since COVID, right, a lot of businesses went out of business, particularly restaurants, because they need the people that are in the office buildings that want to go somewhere for lunch. Yep. And if they're not there, and I've noticed an awful lot of them are either empty, which is just sad because it's, that AT&T story times, exponential, right? But also they're turning them into condos. But even that's a problem, right? Because I've noticed since COVID, people don't want to be around these downtown areas for crime, or I don't need to be, or whatever the reason is from the expense standpoint.
And they thought that was going to be the savior, where these office buildings, they could convert, the lower, few floors and have that be light retail and restaurants and such. And then upstairs, they'd have their clientele built in because they're going to have housing. It just hasn't happened for a number of reasons. First, it costs more to convert those buildings than the geniuses, are talking about. And there's all kinds of regulatory things that come into play when you've got an office use building that now you're going to make residential. That just makes it a slow and clumsy process for a company that isn't even sure if they're going to sell. And there are condo developments in many of the downtowns that are having a hard time selling theirs, and they're built as condos. So when you talk about taking an office building and repurposing it, sounds good in theory, but if there's no demand for it, there's no demand for it. So you could be throwing good money after bad.
Well, I want to give out your information one more time. That's KeithandSheilaHittner.com. If you want to ask Keith a question, you heard something that kind of piqued your interest. I think, I premised this or previewed this rather, is that you're definitely a glass is half full kind of guy. And so I appreciate you joining us tonight. Keith, thanks so much as usual. Appreciate you, buddy. And we'll be back here in a little bit with Bob Schempp. And we're going to carry him for a little while. We'll take your calls as well. And he's going to talk about Rise Up Kings. It's a great leadership organization. So don't go anywhere, folks.
I just have to thank you for doing what you do every night and opening up that mic and hearing from Americans, letting them express their opinions, and really giving people a voice. So God bless you for what you're doing, my friend.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I pardoned Americans of faith thrown in jail for praying in peaceful protest. We reinstated service members thrown out of the military over religious objections to Biden's vaccine mandate. We did a vaccine, but we didn't do a mandate. He did a mandate, threw them out if they didn't take it. Can't do that. I signed an executive order to combat anti-Semitism and set up a DOJ task force to eradicate the anti-Christian bias. We've taken away a lot of, you know what? Just sit down, please. I didn't even know you were standing. What an honor that you stood so long. Wow, that's a great honor. Thank you. Because I know if Biden were up here, you would have been seated. You might have never stood up. No, that's a great honor. I didn't realize it. I signed an executive order to combat anti-Semitism. It's a big thing. A big thing. And I set up a DOJ task force, which is really a big thing, and Dan, you're going to be involved in it, to eradicate anti-Christian bias. You haven't heard that, but there's anti-Christian bias also. And in just a few moments, I'll also be signing an executive order creating a presidential commission on religious liberty, which is really why we're here, more than any other reason.
Welcome back to America at Night with Rich Valdez. I am guesting for him. I am J.D. Lake, broadcasting from Fargo, North Dakota. And that was our president, right? And he's so funny with that stuff and off the cuff. I just love his sense of humor, that he can laugh and poke fun at people, poke fun at himself, right? But I thought that was a really important clip to play. A lot of the religious freedoms that we have were trampled on the last number of years, and he's correcting some wrongs with rights, and that's a beautiful thing. And I thought that was a kind of a nice segue into our interview here with Bob Schempp. So Bob Schempp is a friend of mine. He owns a business in the area here, a couple locations. But more importantly, he's part of an organization called Rise Up Kings, or RUC for short. It's based out of Texas, and it's just a great organization when we talk about men's leadership. But I said earlier in the program about putting masculinity back into men, because there's been a lot of demasculization over the years, and we're going to talk to him a little bit about that. But thanks for joining us tonight, Bob. I appreciate your time.
JD, so good to hear your voice on the radio, my friend.
Well, good to hear yours as well. And, your story with this, I know a little bit about your background, but I guess go as far back as you want. But kind of talk about what your background was prior to joining this organization, and just kind of your take on, where you were personally, but where you think we were from a, masculinity standpoint, because that's a big focus on this organization.
Sure. If you look at the overarching theme of RUC, that's basically kind of how it got started. So Skylar Lewis, and I'll talk a little bit more about him, but he founded RUC, and Skylar's one of these guys. He's a serial entrepreneur, just a great human being, man of God. And he had invested. He's one of these guys that invested deeply in himself. Literally close to $1 million and going to all these big name seminars, and really trying to learn and getting these powerful associations. But he found that when he went to a lot of them, a lot of these guys, they would do the right things in terms of their business, but at night, they wanted to go party and have fun. And hey, that's your choice, that's your life, you can do that. But he wanted something that was more, I'll just say it, Christ-centered. So have that firm foundation, right? But one of the big overarching themes is, we live in a society now. What is a man? What is a woman, right? And so basically he wanted to empower, the next generation of men to lead their business, their family, themselves at a much higher level, basically to, the man, to be the man that God created you to be. And now it's spun off, it started off as being just for business owners, but now they have a Rise Up Queens for the ladies. They have something called The Awakening, which is for business professionals. And then they also have something called The Crucible for young men to train that next generation, Gen Z, get those guys, hopefully headed in the right direction. And, the reason why they try to focus on leaders, men that are going to take this out and focus, into the world, right? We don't want to just be men that are, to be the men that we were created to be, but we also want to help other men get there and create those associations. So I kind of found RUC, it was interesting. So, obviously they do a little marketing on Facebook, but this is not something I would have done. I had a pretty blessed life. I grew up a very hard life as a young person. My parents were into drugs and alcohol, and God bless them, they've cleaned that up now. But they weren't around a lot, and I learned a lot of bad habits. But I had a tough life growing up, and of course I followed suit. And then at 21 years old, I actually changed my life in terms of getting rid of the drugs and alcohol and just focused on, trying to get out of poverty. And I was blessed to live the American dream, married a wonderful woman who helped me get there. And, I had this great life on paper, right? Like I had, a successful business, I felt like I was a good guy, but I just wasn't happy, and I would tell people when I found Rise Up Kings, or Rise Up Kings found me, or God used Rise Up Kings, or however you want to look at that, it's probably all the above. But when I was sitting on the couch one day, and I wasn't suicidal, man, but like I just didn't care if I lived anymore. I felt like this sounds arrogant, but I felt like my 50% was, put me at the top echelon of men around me. But at the same time, I just didn't feel complete. There was something missing, and this ad pops up for Rise Up Kings, which is, I just got to tell you, when you look at the ad, it's kind of, at least the one I saw, it almost looks like a boot camp, if you will. And frankly, there's a couple military guys that are head coaches that make it feel a little bit like boot camp, at least the event I went to. And I saw this, I'm like, this ain't really for me, but for some reason, you ever get that tug? You just get that tug, and you just know something's calling you. And I saw it again, and I'm like, man, why is this tugging at me? So I brought it up to my wife, and expecting her to be like, what are you talking about? And she's like, hey, that sounds cool. You should look into it. So I call them, and the event I went to is not free. Okay, it takes a lot to put these events on. And it's just not something I had done. I had not invested in myself financially before. And so I called the coach, and I had a great conversation with him, and he kind of said everything that I had already thought about myself and the opportunity that was joining this movement. And yet he told me the price, and I'm like, I don't know, man. Let me think about it. I got to talk to my wife. I went to my wife, and she's more frugal than I am, and I expect her to say no. And she looked at me, she goes, why didn't you sign up? And I was like, well, I didn't know if I should do it and if I should spend that kind of money. She's like, well, it's a lot cheaper than a divorce. It's like, okay, bitch. I got it. Speaking loud and clear. Okay, honey, I get it. But, and I don't know if we were there, but, it's just, I will tell you this, to sum it up, it's been the greatest investment in my life I have ever made. The money that I've spent, which looking back isn't much, is fractional compared to what I've learned. From the first event, it literally turned my life around. You go to this event, it's in Texas, and they really do try to break down your walls, both physically and mentally. But not in a way that's going to hurt you, or at least most people don't get hurt, but it's certainly going to break you down. And it's amazing when you start breaking down those walls and you see men around you with their walls broken down. And I'm talking, the group I was in, man, there was some guys that were, big hitters, multi-millionaires, down to guys that just had a great little plumbing business, one-man show. But, all strong, powerful men, at least on paper, right? Because that's another thing. Like, what does it mean to be masculine? Well, masculine doesn't mean pump your chest and beat your chest and, act tough and be loud, which frankly, a lot of men are that way. And that turns a lot of people off from masculinity. And I think it's quite the opposite. I think a strong man actually is a humble man, right? So anyways, you see these men get broke down, and at the same time it's happening to me. And it literally put my life at a 360 or for 180, excuse me. Like I completely turned my life around. Like I'm going a completely different direction now. And really one that's focused on what they consider the 4 pillars, which are faith, family, fitness, and finance, in that order. And most of these men, they were out of line somewhere, right? Like if you're a Christian, you believe God first, right? Faith first, right? And then your family should come next. Well, a lot of men that I found, and myself included, maybe the finance came first, then you want to say your family, but really if you look at where are you spending your time, right? Where are you spending your intentional effort? Are you going to work and giving it all at work, but coming home and, you're tired and don't feel like doing anything, or you need that time to yourself, or whatever it is, whatever your excuse is, then, next thing we know, a lot of men find ourselves sedating with social media or sports, or, worst case scenario, alcohol, drugs, pornography, story after story after story. And obviously I'm not going to share anybody's stories here, but that was probably one of the more powerful things too. Like you look at these guys that, all of them seem like they had their life just together. And then you get into the I don't want to give away any of the experiences if anybody listening wants to go, but you get into this experience where you know it's just you and they kind of well, I'll just say it. This like I say, you're sitting in an ice bath. So when you're sitting in an ice bath and your body temperature drops and you're focused on survival, all of a sudden when they start asking you questions, all you can do is answer honestly. And some of these men are telling stories about what they had been through, what they had done themselves. You know, one guy really stuck with me on the video, said, you know, if any other man did to my wife what I've done to her, I'd kill him.
Well, and on that note, hold that thought for a second. We're going to go to break. This is such a great topic, Bob. Thanks for sharing not only your personal, but also some of that. I want to hear more about that when we get back. You can give us a call. Bob said he'd be kind enough to take calls. We're going to probably have him on for another 45 minutes or maybe half an hour. But the number is 833-482-5337 or 833-4-VALDEZ. That's with an S. So stick around. We're going to talk more with Bob Shimp on Rise Up Kings when we return. Talk to you soon.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Welcome back to America at Night with Rich Valdez. As you can tell, I'm not him. This is JD Lake. I'm broadcasting from Fargo, North Dakota. Rich as well, though. Don't worry. He was honored to be chosen by the New York City Councilwoman Vicky Palladino to be the MC for the State of the District Address, and he will be back tomorrow. So that's what he's up to tonight, but he will be back tomorrow. And right now we're talking with Bob Shimp, and we'll take some calls on the topic as well. He's from Rise Up Kings, or is part of that organization, Rise Up Kings or RUC. It's a men's leadership organization, among other things. There's some different things, as he was mentioning before break, for women as well, Rise Up Queens. But you will take your calls, as you heard, 833-4-VALDEZ. If you have any questions for Bob at all, feel free to give us a call. And Bob, so we were talking about the ice bath thing right before a break, and I want you to kind of continue on that. But that's, I mean, that is really fascinating, and that's part of the kind of the breaking down that you were talking about and kind of getting to the root of some of the issues that, you know, every man has, right?
Absolutely, my friend. And I just want one point of clarification. I just want to make it clear. I'm not part of Rise Up Kings in terms of I'm not a coach. I'm not employed by them. I'm just a man whose life was completely transformed by them, and I'm passionate to share this with other men in hopes that other men and women, you know, obviously there's a female portion. And hey, by the way, they have a Spanish version now started too. So if you speak Spanish, there's an opportunity for you to go around other people, Spanish-speaking people. But I'm a man who's passionate about sharing that. I hope other people feel that, and I hope somebody else that needs this takes the opportunity to at least ask a question and maybe even go themselves. But yeah, the breaking down is probably one of the more important parts, because you know, you can describe it as walls or masks. And one of the coaches described it to me is like, imagine you're holding a cat and you're petting this cat with, you know, 5 pairs of gloves on, and you pet him, you don't feel anything, right? You're still doing the thing, but you're not actually feeling anything. And as you take a glove off, you feel a little bit more. Take another one, and pretty soon now you can feel that cat's soft hair, and you can feel the purr and the warmth. That's kind of what we are as men a lot of times in society. You know, we wear all these masks, all these fronts. You know, a lot of them, the most common, I think, is the humor mask, right? Like, we all like to make jokes and harass each other. And instead of having real conversations about life, being like, hey, man, you know, how are you? Oh, I'm great. You know, how's the weather? Oh, great. You know, how about that sports team? You know, whereas my RUC, when we have conversations, it's like, hey, man, like, what's hurting you? What's what's going on in your life. Because, hey, by the way, we're all flawed. We're all humans. We're all sinners, right? We all got work to do. And the sad truth is the more you dive into this, the more work you do on yourself. And they have multiple layers to this program too, by the way. The more you do it, the more you realize, man, I had some huge blind spots and I got a lot of work to do to be the man that I was created to be.
Yeah, what an excellent point. I know that, excuse me, I know that we talked about, like what you said, asking somebody how they're doing. There was somebody kind of close to us, both of us actually, that, you probably know who I'm talking about, that committed suicide this last year. And, I'm sure he had some problems going on, but we don't ask enough to people how they're doing. And I know I didn't to that person, just stop and, kind of, besides the normal banter and just like, no, seriously, how are you doing? And I don't know that would have helped in this situation, but there's an importance to, again, checking on your friends and seeing what's going on, just below the surface. So I'm with you there 100%. So you described what the organization is like. You kind of described, what the training retreats are like. What's one of your favorite things about the organization?
Oh, top of mind, the top thing for me is associations. When I get around this other group of men and women that have the same mindset in faith, family, fitness, and finance, it can't help. Iron sharpens iron, right? That's no accident that verse was created. It's true. And I get around these people, and it makes me want to be a better man. It makes me a better man. And for a lot of reasons, right? You get around people like that, and obviously you don't want to get too much into comparison because comparison's a thief, right? But at the same time, you start looking at, okay, man, that's awesome. I want to be like that, or ooh, I don't want to do that, or I'm going to look in the mirror because that person looks just like me, and I didn't realize I was doing what they were just doing. But now looking at it from this perspective, it's different, right? So the definitely associations is number one, and there's some powerful men and women in this group. And I'm talking people that lead multi-million dollar companies, people flying private jets, all the way down to people who, don't have anything, right? That's what's cool. And you learn something from everybody you're around every time you're around them.
Well, we're going to go to break again for a second, and we'll come right back. What I want to ask you, too, is I know you mentioned being married, and I happen to know your beautiful wife. And I wanted to know specifically kind of how that's helped your marriage. We're going to come back in a little bit. We've got a few minutes to talk about that, what it's done for you, again, and your wife's relationship, because that's going to also hit home, and also how it's changed you as a father. So we'll be back here in just a little bit. I'm J.D. Lake filling in for Rich. He'll be back tomorrow evening. And don't go anywhere. We'll talk to Bob Schempp here in a little bit.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Welcome back to the Rich Valdez Show. I'm J.D. Lake filling in for Rich. We're talking here with Bob Schempp, kind of rounding out the second hour. And I actually, before break, about, we're talking, it's Rise Up Kings is what we're discussing. It's an organization that he found and has helped him a lot in his life. And I was asking you how it's helped your marriage, but I'm going to keep you over to the next hour if that's okay with you, and maybe ask you a slightly different question so we give you a little bit more time. But you mentioned this, it's changed you in all aspects of life. How has it changed you from a business perspective, would you say, and helped you in that arena?
Oh, it's huge, man. So it helps me understand myself and people better. And it's made me a better human being, but a better leader, too. So obviously that translates to better businessman.
Well, that's good. We'll let you expand on that after the top of the hour. And, please join us for this conversation, because it's just going to get better with Bob. He is part of Rise Up Kings. It's an organization he found. And stick around. We'll be right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Welcome back to America at Night with Rich Valdez. I am JD Lake filling in for Rich tonight. Rich is, well, don't worry. He was honored. He was actually chosen to be the New York City Councilman Vicky Palladino's MC tonight for the State of the District address, and he'll be back tomorrow night, so going to want to be around for that. And I was listening to the intro there, and it said interesting guests, and we have one of those right now with us. His name is Bob Shimp. He is from the area here. He's a friend of mine. He owns a business with a couple locations, very successful business. He runs it actually with his wonderful and beautiful wife. And we were talking about the organization RUCK, which stands for Rise Up Kings. And Bob actually had got involved with them a few years back, went through their program and still is. It's not a one and done, it's a constant thing, but it's really about faith, family, finance, and fitness are their kind of pillars. You can obviously get that information on their website. But the last hour we were talking about the very end, we kind of got cut off there. I apologize, Bob. But what it's done for your business. If there's anything more you wanted to add there, but more importantly, you had a good marriage obviously before. But what has it done with your marriage that you can pinpoint some things for us?
Certainly. I'll start with the business just because that's a quick answer. Just simply because don't get me wrong, it's made a huge difference in my business. But for me, that was probably my strongest of those four pillars before. I was blessed to be around some really great mentors. My wife has been an entrepreneur forever, longer than I ever was. She's the reason I'm an entrepreneur. So, that we had a successful business. But what's really changed for me in the business is this group has taught me. I was your typical or stereotypical small business owner where I thought the way to get ahead was to do everything myself and spend 78 hours a week, grinding it out. And I wore that grind like a badge of honor, and getting around these other men who thought, man, maybe there's a different way. Maybe you can actually teach your people to run your business, and you can focus on actually leading your business. So for me, it's made me a much better leader at my business. I still got work to do, but it's definitely changed. I went from working 78 hours a week to, sometimes I don't even work 40, which is crazy for me to think a business owner can get away with that. And guess what? The business is more successful than ever. So apparently I'm not as great as I thought I was.
Well, and oddly enough, too, I mean, one of the things you said is it's allowed you to step away. And I don't mean step away from you're not working, but step away and not physically be present all the time. That's part of that 70 to 80 hours, right? I mean, I know in talking to you in the past, you say, yeah, I'm working from home this morning. Why not? And it creates that leadership, again, delegating to other folks there to help, and then allows you to have some quiet time at home to make calls and, work with vendors, et cetera.
100%. I spend more time working on my business than in my business now, and that's really where the balance comes in. And that came with a lot of tools. They've given me a lot of tools that have helped me. It's not just like, hey, here's this idea that I never thought of before. Of course, I've heard these things before, but having the associations and the tools, and I mean, there's literally the mastermind group that they have is a world-class business mastermind. I mean, it literally could be at the top, and it might be someday.
If you have any questions, by the way, for Bob, the phone number is 833-482-5337 or 833-4-VALDEZ. That's with an S. And he will answer them about the organization or anything regarding kind of what it's done for him. All right, now for the longer answer on your marriage, because if you came up with a quick answer, that probably wouldn't be acceptable to the missus, I'm guessing.
No, and frankly, she'll probably be the one to tell you we still got some room to grow, and I'll be the first to admit that. I'm still a human being, man, and I got, I'm almost 45 years old. I got a lifetime of building up bad habits, and then Jen and I've been married for almost 17 years. There's a lot of hurt and resentment and things that have gone on, and just and then I still have some human behaviors that show up. So I don't want to say that I'm anywhere near the man that I was called to be, but I got to tell you, I'm much different. I don't even know if I'd still be married today if not for Rise Up Kings. But one thing I do know for sure is my marriage wouldn't be anywhere near what it is today without Rise Up Kings. And that really comes through a lot of that, there's a lot of healing for myself, a lot of past hurts that I had to deal with. And then, there's also some marriage transformational events that we've done. So Jen's done the Rise Up Queens. They have they have multiple events, but she's done the two main ones, the Rise Up Queens event, and then they call it Deeper, where they dive a little bit deeper. And then together we did something called Elevate the Marriage Transformation. And through these, we've garnered so many tools. And obviously it starts with putting God at the center of our marriage, for us anyways. And that's changed everything. We started praying together, praying over each other, and really focused on, okay, let's put him first and let's have him bless our marriage. So obviously he gets all the glory in that, but we've also done the work too. We talk a lot about that in Rise Up Kings about, doing versus being. Sometimes as human beings, we get caught up in doing things. We do all these things, but who are we trying to be? So you got to find that balance, right? Because God wants you to be this person, right? But you can't just sit on your hands either and do nothing. Like I can't go sit on the street corner and just expect, hey, God, show up and do this for me. Like he still wants me to get up, right? But he wants me to glorify his name when I'm doing so. So we've tried to do the same thing in our marriage. We're imperfect people, but man, it's just changed how I show up. It's changed how we recover too. We still have those marital spats. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of years of resentments built up, but we can actually, step back. Let's reach into this tool bag of tools that we both garnered from these programs, and let's find a way to talk through this. And I'd say to sum it up, and I can make this a much longer answer too, but to sum it up, I think the biggest thing for me is just, realizing who I am. What's my identity, right? And my identity was given to me by Christ. It doesn't even come from my wife, right? So I need to be the man that he called me to be. And, one of the guys that's involved in Ruck is a gentleman who's got a big podcast by the name of Brant Hansen. And he's got a super interesting story because he's not a big masculine man. In fact, he's got a neurological disorder that prevented him from playing sports and such. So he's like, well, how do I show up as a man? How do I protect my family? Well, one of the things he said that literally stabbed me right in my chest at one of the events, he said, all these men get up and say, I would do anything to defend my family. And if a man came in, I would, hurt him or worse. And, we all say that. But then he said, well, what are the chances of that actually happening? Who's the man that really is hurting your family? Who's the man that's not there, who's not present, who says snide things to his wife? Who's the man that really hurts your wife more than anybody? And I was like, oh, man. So he talks about it from a biblical perspective. He says, we're as men, we're supposed to be the keepers of the garden. Adam was there, right? He wasn't off somewhere when this all happened, right? Like he was there and he did nothing. And then he went and hid. So are you doing that in your marriage and your life? And anyways, that's really where the root of my big transformation starts from, is being that keeper of the garden.
Yeah, it's something definitely I could work on. I'm not married at the moment, but, I know it's something that definitely appeals to me with everything you're saying, that humbleness, that tenderheartedness. Not enough people have that, and I know that much about relationships and marriage. And, it starts with you, right? The person, in this case, myself, I'm pointing at. One thing, I was thinking about as you were talking about all that, there's some people listening, they're probably, maybe they're not necessarily unbelievers, but they're like thinking, I'm not really as far along as Bob, when he talks about praying with his wife and things like that, or just that I don't go to church right now. What do you say to those people if they're thinking a lot of the other things with Rise Up King sounds really appealing, but how do I even embark on some of the things that Bob's saying?
Dude, 3 years ago, I was you. That's what I would tell you. 3 years ago, I was you. 2.5 years ago, actually. I've always been a believer, but I've always wrestled with that relationship. Like I was raised without any church. My family just didn't go. It's a whole different story for a different day. But I went in and out of faith, believing, non-believing, questioning God, all these things that humans naturally do, but maybe even at a level where I was even blasphemous at times. I was not always this man. And even if you don't want to be that man or that woman, that's fine. Like there's so many other things you can garner from Ruck and Rise Up Queens. We're talking like psychological tools and developmental tools and business tools, and that you're going to be a better person if you take this investment or take this time and investment in yourself. I promise you you can hold me to that. You can come back and tell me if I'm a liar, but I promise you'll get a reward if you were to do these events.
Well, that's a great point. And how do they get in touch with the organization again? Both that, and then also if you're willing to, give out any communication that, if somebody's thinking in the audience, like I'd like to talk to Bob, ask him a question. Is there an email address or something they can get a hold of you, or would you just rather have them go to Rise Up Kings, whichever you prefer?
I think Rise Up Kings is the best, man. Like, obviously this has blessed my life and it's made me a better man. And I'd be happy to talk to people, but there's a whole nother level to this, right? And like the men and women that are leading this group, they're the ones you want to talk to. They're going to be able to answer those questions much better than I can. So I just simply go to riseupkings.com. That's the simplest way to find them, or if you want to email, go support@riseupkings.com and ask some questions. And those people are so good at responding, and I'm telling you, they care about you and they want to help you and answer your questions. And they want to get you there, but they want to get you there so they can help, not because they just want another participant.
And from the time you reached out to the time that you were actually going through their program, just walk the audience through kind of how long that was. Is it just, in a month, or are they running the stuff every couple months, or tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so they run several events per year. So it depends on which event you're talking about. The one they do the most often is called Refinery. That's just they do that more often because that's how it all got started. So a lot of referrals have come from that. And the Refinery is the one that's, aimed towards business owners. But they have several events throughout the year. And the other thing they just started too, they have some virtual stuff where, maybe you're on the fence. Now I would tell you, get off that fence and go all in. But you know what? You want to dip your toes in that pool, they have an option for that where you can just do it virtually. But I would say there's probably 4 events a month. For me, I called them and I bet you 3 weeks later I was on a plane.
Wow. And I mean, you said too that you even attend some of the events now. I mean, you attend some further growth events for yourself, but you even go if I think I heard you right for some of these, like the Refinery as an example. Do you not? Do you show up for that as almost like not a coach, but I don't know what role it is. Maybe you could tell us. Yeah.
Yeah. So I volunteered. I was blessed to volunteer. So there's different pods, right? So every pod it's not a very scientific system. It's just one through. They just did number 56. I was pod 32 of the Refinery, and they just did number 56. So obviously there's a lot of these going on, but I think it was number 44 I went to, and that I got to see it from an outside perspective, which was just such a huge blessing, to serve these other men, but to watch these men transform. And then, of course, I relived my event, and, I had to afterwards go revisit all my notes because I realized I'd missed about 20 things that I had either forgotten or missed. But, yeah, it's amazing opportunities, and that's constant. And that's the thing is, like, these people at Rise Up Kings, they don't want to just take your money, give you a big rah-rah speech and get you all worked up and then send you out into the world. Like, they literally want to, they will say, run with you, right? Like, they literally want to do life together. And if you really go in, join the mastermind, and like I have a group called our Forum. Now, these are 6 dudes. I'm one of them that literally are intentional about like diving deep into each other's lives, and we tell each other things that we don't tell anybody. And again, this is powerful associations. I mean, one of them is the leader of the new Spanish-speaking group. It's just a lot of powerful people to be around.
Well, appreciate your time so much tonight, Rob. You've been a great friend to me. And again, I would encourage people to go to riseupkings.com. And if you want any more information and ask questions, and again, if we reached a few people in the audience tonight with this, I would say that's success. So thanks so much for joining, Bob. We're going to come back here in just a minute or a couple minutes, and we're going to take all your calls. I know there's some folks waiting for other topics. We'll take those, and we're going to get into some other news of the day. So stick around.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Welcome back to America at Night with Rich Valdez. I'm JD Lake. I'm sitting in for him tonight. Don't worry, though. He'll be back tomorrow. He was honored to be chosen by the New York Councilman Vicky Palladino to be an MC for an event tonight, the State of the District Address. But again, he'll be back tomorrow, and he'll have a fresh set of guests. Meanwhile, we're going to start taking your calls here. It looks like we have. Paul has been holding a little while. Paul, you had a comment about Stephen Miller.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry I'm not familiar with you, but if Rich wanted you to be on the show, there's probably a good reason. So
well,
I'm enjoying listening to what you have to say.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, as far as Stephen Miller is concerned, I happened to catch Fox this morning before I had to leave. I had an engagement early this morning, and he was at the podium, and he was talking about the changes that are going to be made as far as some of the horrible things that they've been doing to children, as far as flipping them from boys to girls and girls to boys, sending them off to school at the age of 3 years of age as a boy, and you get a 3-year-old girl coming home, not necessarily in a dress, but believing that she's a girl now. And I just find the criminal intent in that to be abhorrent. I can't imagine being a parent and having my child come home in the state of not knowing who they are and what they are. And that was just one thing that Stephen Miller was talking about. But, I managed to make it through a day of prayer today without crying, because I was so grateful to hear that news, that those kids are going to have somewhat of a normal life if they just let them be kids and not try to turn them into something that they're not. And, it was great to see that our president was out there being a part of National Day of Prayer. And, when I see my president praying, it gives me extra hope that he knows what he's doing, because he's getting a message from the big guy upstairs.
Well,
that we can.
Yeah, and you mentioned a great point in there about you praying. I appreciate that for the children too. And that is abhorrent to your point. I've seen some X videos that have been it's criminal. It is child abuse, folks. When you have parents sitting on X, and this is a newborn, or maybe let's say 6 months old. Well, we really think that she's a he or he's a girl, and they're getting him on puberty blockers at that age. That is, any age I think below 18 is criminal, because there's people coming out all the time. There was this heartbreaking one the other day I was watching, kind of a man on the street conversation, where the person that came up, she had transitioned. Her breasts had been mutilated or chopped off when she was in her teens, and she's wishing she didn't do it, and she's trying to change it around. So, yeah, thanks for that point, Paul, and we'll talk a little bit more with some of the other callers and finish that point on the other side of this break. Don't go anywhere, folks.
Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Welcome back to America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is JD Lake filling in for Rich tonight. He is off on assignment. He'll be back, though, tomorrow. He's actually was honored to be chosen by New York Councilwoman Vicky Palladino to be the State of the the MC for the State of a District Address. And like I said, we'll be back tomorrow and take your calls. But we're going to continue taking your calls right now. We're going to go to, let's see here. Let's go to line 3 on the Why Are Republicans, let's see, George here, sorry. Yeah, George, welcome to the show. Oh, sorry, we'll take Jerome. I apologize.
Is this the Lincolnator?
How you doing, sir?
Hey, what happened today? What happened to Mikey? We like Mikey. You got to bring Mikey back. Who's going to be the national security advisor if Mikey's not there?
No, he's referring to Mike Waltz, folks. So, yeah, what are we going to do with him gone? Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't get to finish that point earlier that, yeah, he definitely got fired today along with Alex Wong. And I think that was a good thing. I mean, I had my suspicions about Mike. I think like a lot of people did maybe listening today, particularly, you know, when he said he wasn't sure how that was, and this is back to the Signal chat, if you remember, folks, so where the Atlantic reporter got inadvertently added by Mike Walls, and he was having a communication with Pete Hegseth and a number of other people in the cabinet. And he said he wasn't sure how this reporter got added, but I know Signal a little bit. It's a very secure application, and more importantly, it's a government-approved application. So when they say, oh, it's a Signal chat, they make it sound unsecure. It's actually approved for government use, including by all the folks who are using it. But it also goes by the phone numbers in your phone. And I never quite bought that, well, how did that phone number end up in my phone from this Atlantic reporter from Mike Waltz? And then he showed up in a picture with him as well. So, yeah, thanks for that call on kind of reminding us about that Mike Waltz. And again, he got changed to an ambassador today, the actual role that Elise Stefanik was going to take, which is kind of, like I said, is kind of seems like it's compared to where he was at going off to Antarctica. But again, I don't think, being that he's a neocon, that was such a bad thing, because we're trying not to get in other wars, and particularly bombing Iran. I don't think that's a healthy thing for our government right now. Let's see here. We got line 4. It looks like John from North Carolina, from WRNN. You had a comment about Jason Lewis being on.
Hi, JD. How you doing? You're having a
good.
very enlightening show tonight.
Oh, thank you.
A lot of the things you're hitting on are really, really popular and important right now. Jason hit on everything just the way it should be said. I remember when he went in with Trump in 2016. Trump had so much going against him going in there, not knowing the gang, like Jason was saying. And then for the 4 years after, my opinion, they stole the election. He had a chance. Trump is not stupid to find out who the people were that are in there. And when he went in with off and hit the ground running, he did exactly what he had to do, and he knew what he had to do. He's doing a wonderful job, I think, and he's the best president I've ever, in my opinion, he's the best president we've ever had.
Yeah, I mean, and I think too, John, and hold on there for a second, but I'd like to get your take on, I personally, it's bittersweet to say this, but I think it was good that Trump won in 2024, not 2020. And the reason why is I think that time gave him time to think, gave him time to weed out essentially all the rhinos, build this incredible team. I mean, when you think Tulsi, RFK, Rubio is incredible. I mean, I'm surprised at how well he's doing at Secretary of State and how he's perfectly aligned with Trump. And, again, this expert team, I don't think that would have happened in 20. I think it would have been a continuation of just, again, a lot of the nonsense we saw from people, sneaking their way in the administration and then, again, doing neocon types of things like getting us into wars. But what's your take on that? I'd be curious.
They're going off on. They're all they've all gotten stronger from his strength, from his logic. He's a man he thinks for the country. He doesn't think for himself. Everybody can have whatever they have to say about him, but the man is God's man, and he's doing what the country needs, and he's fixing all the things that they attempted to break in this country. They really did. They just destroyed this country for the 4 years that they were in. You know, all the Bidenomics is great and all that. It's just all horse crap. And it bothered me to see it all happen. But like you said, at least they got a chance to see what we were up against and what kind of perversion, for all it's worth, that they tried to put into society and have everybody accept it was unacceptable. And you know, even the other side doesn't think like them. It was all just too much, and it was fast.
Just think, thanks so much for the call. I appreciate that. You know, and just think if we would have had Kamala and we were talking about Tim Walz earlier in the program for our vice president, I mean, this would have been a nightmare, folks, and I don't think it would have been one we would have recovered from. Speaking of Kamala, she was out on the circuit. She's speaking a little bit more, and Carolyn Levitt had a pretty interesting comment. I don't have the clip handy, but essentially what Carolyn Levitt said today is, keep going out there and speaking, Kamala. She said that right from the podium. She said, that's good for us. Keep going out there and doing those speeches, Kamala. So appreciate that call. Let's go to line one here with, looks like Tony in Montreal, Canada. And actually, Tony, I have a friend of mine. Her name's Lisa. She's listening from Toronto, but she is from Montreal. So, yeah, you wanted to talk about people going after Letitia James? Go ahead. Thanks for joining the program.
Yeah, hi. Hi, good evening, and thanks for taking my call. I usually call Rich, and I'm happy to hear you taking over tonight. I'm glad that he's doing great work down in New York, and he got some type of emceeing done because he's a great speaker and a great orator, and I appreciate his conservative point of view, and that's why we're listening in Montreal, Canada, and probably elsewhere across Canada. But I'm just wondering why the age of innocence is no longer something of importance when it comes to children and traditional America, whether it's traditional America or traditional North America, which includes Canada. Because the age of innocence is what your earlier caller was talking about when people are doing, let's say, kind of strange things to young children that are going to school that are 3 years old and trying to convince them rather than study math and history and English, rather to change their gender, which is an impossibility for me to understand at 3 years old that a child could even understand what gender is. But that's not the issue that I want to talk about, is the age of innocence, which is what Trump is promoting, what he calls the age, the golden age. What he really believes is that we should return back to a period of time where we had traditional America or traditional life, which would be something back to maybe the 50s. And people don't like that idea because they consider that to be a white America. Well, it's not. Traditional America is all colors of the rainbow, and it includes everybody. And he wants that America to be prosperous and to be fruitful and to be going forward as a power in the world, which it should be. But people like Letitia James organizes 15 AGs across the United States to fight Trump on issues, and then pontificates and proselytizes falsehoods, saying that he stopped Alzheimer's research at SUNY universities in New York, which is Plattsburgh and different universities around Buffalo, etc. But when you actually look at it, his Doge team has prevented or trying to cut the fat where they're promoting DEI projects and DEI in sort of not experimentation, but whatever it's called, research for DEI projects. And what we're doing as Republicans is that we're not responding in kind to the media attacks. It seems like the Democrats and the people that are in positions in the state governments are continually obstructing Trump and continually using whatever is at their resource to block us under falsehoods. We are not blocking Alzheimer's research. What the Trump team didn't like was that they were looking at Alzheimer's only in Latino communities and other communities rather than the entire population. Why are we just looking at Latino Alzheimer's? Why don't we look at white, black, purple, green, and yellow? It doesn't really matter what color the person is or what the background is. And, if you're looking at LGBTQ research for diseases for alcoholism in youth of LGBTQ, and that I don't agree that the United States should be spending that amount of money on that type of issue. Aren't we worried about drug abuse amongst all youth? It shouldn't be just LGBTQ. It should include LGBTQ people, and it should include all children of the United States. And I think that as Republicans, the Republicans do not meet the onslaught. They don't meet the media onslaught. They don't meet the state onslaught, and I don't understand why that is, and maybe you can tell me.
Yeah, it's tough, because of all the media that's against the Republicans and the conservatives in general, even corporations, right? It was funny when you were talking about Alzheimer's and, if you, I'm sure, I don't know if Rich has had on Callie or Cassie Means, but they are advising Trump and RFK. And if you could look up anything about Callie, or I said this Cassie, it's Casey Means, you should look them up, because what they're finding out, and again, this isn't the end-all be-all cure for every single person, but what they're finding out about Alzheimer's and dementia and some of these things is, I kid you not, dietary can make a huge difference. If it can't completely, in some cases, and I'm not kidding, can make it go away, or I hate to say the word cure, but at least make it go away and or lessen it, it's dietary, and it's stuff like sugar. It's stuff like fat, right? We've been brought up to believe that you can't have, you should have a low-fat diet, and you need good fats, and you need fat in your diet, and it's something that, again, is very healthy for the brain. Your brain's made of all of this. So going back to your point, though, it's just such an onslaught, and I really believe the team that's around Trump right now and all the surrogates that are out in the media, and I would include myself right in that, we're doing the best we can to battle it every day, to look to essentially, debate or not debate, but go against all of their lies and definitely, get the right message out. But I appreciate that call so much, Tony from Montreal. Wish we had a little more time to talk to you. And thanks for it's WVMT radio station that he was calling on. I was wondering earlier if we broadcast into Canada. I thought as much. But appreciate you bringing that fun fact up. And again, we'll come back here with more of your calls and maybe hit a few topics here shortly to round out the end of the show. So thanks for sticking around with us, and we'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Welcome back to America at Night with Rich Valdez. I am JD Lake filling in for him tonight. By the way, I didn't give you my information out. You can reach me at JDLake_radio on Twitter or X, if you will. But so we were talking earlier in the program about kind of unity. And one of the things that I liked hearing the past week is some reaching across the aisle. And that came in the form of Bill Maher. Actually, Kid Rock is the one who started. Strange bedfellows, right? It almost reminds me of Dennis Rodman brokering the North Korea stuff years ago. But nonetheless, Kid Rock says, in case some of you don't know about this, Kid Rock is good friends with Bill Maher. I won't say good friends, but friends. And has been on his podcast and show and all that. But he's also good friends with the president, Kid Rock is, and as we know. And I'd say they're much better friends. But he thought it'd be a good idea. Like, look, everything's just so amped up to the last caller from Montreal talking about how do we combat some of this stuff. And I think one way is reaching across the aisle and what we agree on. And there are a lot of things that, believe it or not, Bill Maher and President Trump agree on. So Bill Maher got invited to the White House, and it's hilarious. I'll play this first clip. It's cut 3. So Kid Rock had actually proposed, this, and they accepted. And before he went to the White House, he told Dana White, he put a call into him, and this is Dana White describing that a little bit. Go ahead and play cut 3.
Kid Rock is blowing my phone up, and he's like, I need some help. I just got Bill Maher and Donald Trump to have dinner together. And if this thing goes south, I don't want to be there by myself. Will you fly out here?
Well, tell me about the dinner, because this is probably the most famous dinner to happen in the past year or plus.
So the first thing that happens is Bill Maher walks in into the Oval Office, and me and the president were in there, and he has a piece of paper with every name that the president has called him over the last, however many years. There were like 100 names on this list. And it was hilarious. Thank God he had two of them, because I had them both sign it, and I'm getting it framed and hanging it in my office. But I think the coolest thing about that meeting and that dinner was two guys who have not liked each other for a very long time, two guys who have many opposing views, got together and sat down and talked, and they talked about a lot of things that they agree on and a lot of things that they disagree on. But Kid Rock and I always say, and you know this better than anybody, nobody walks into a meeting or a dinner with Donald Trump and walks out and doesn't like him. It's impossible. And if you say you don't, you're lying.
And isn't that the truth? I've actually known some people that have met with the president, including my mentor friend I mentioned at the beginning of the program, Scott Hennon, here at the station. I'll play this a second clip. This is cut one. This is Bill Maher now, going on Real Time with Bill Maher a few weeks ago after this happened, and describing his meeting with the president.
Okay, so meet up in person. Maybe it'll be different. Spoiler alert, it was. First good sign, before I left for the Capitol, I had my staff collect and print out this list of almost 60 different insulting epithets that the president has said about me. Things like stupid, dummy, lowlife dummy, sleazebag, sick, sad, stone cold crazy. Really a dumb guy, fired like a dog, his show is dead. There's 60. I brought this to the White House because I wanted him to sign it, which he did with good humor. And I know as I say that, millions of liberal sphincters just tightened. What I'm going to do is report exactly what happened. You decide what you think about it.
And that was Bill Maher describing that meeting. It's really quite something. And what people don't know is Trump does have a good sense of humor, and self-deprecating at that. He signed that. I mean, what a way to start off that meeting. I think is just brilliant by Bill. And again, there were a lot of things they agreed on, believe it or not, and things that they didn't. And one last thing I'll say about this is that Bill got invited to the White House, period, for this dinner. He said, and later in that monologue, that he's donated to the Obama campaigns. He's donated to Clinton. He never felt like he could talk to them as comfortable as he talked to President Trump. But more importantly, never got invited to the White House. It wouldn't be that Trump would be the one to do it. So I think that was a great reach across the aisle on both parts. So stick around. We're going to come back. We'll take your calls here to round out the hour. And don't go anywhere, folks.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Thanks, and welcome back to America at Night with Rich Valdez. I'm sitting in for Rich tonight. I'm JD Lake. And Rich will be back tomorrow, so Fearless Leader will be back in the hot seat tomorrow with some good guests. It's funny, I was looking at the news and this week, and I don't know if you saw this, but there was the pictures of the illegal aliens that have been caught and deported on the White House lawn. They were on big cards, big pictures. And I thought that was really interesting because the media refuses to talk about these criminals, right, that are being deported and showing their names, faces, what they've done. And the White House set these up right in the background of their shots. So they have to be in certain spots on that White House lawn to take shots. And I just thought that was such a beautiful thing. I want to thank Rich a ton. This was a lot of fun. I'd love to do it again. And again, thanks for thinking of me too. Thanks for sticking around as well. Again, I'm JD Lake from Fargo, North Dakota. You can catch me at JD Lake_radio on Twitter. And thanks so much for joining. And have a good evening, folks. We'll talk to you soon.